Hi, this is a VR for the Four Queens. You just did a video about your decks, and you mentioned the Thoth deck, and you said you'd like to hear other people's opinions on it. So I wanted to share that with you, and I thought it'd be nice to do it in this format. So yes, I have had this deck for probably about 10 years, and this looks like it's a different version than what you have. And when I first got the deck, at that time, there seemed like there was a lot of mystery surrounding the deck, and there probably still is in a certain way, and that's really, I think, what drew me to it. I wanted to experience it. And my readings in the beginning with it, they were they're very accurate, always are, but they were so kind of in your face. It would remind you like of a friend that doesn't know how to filter their words. They just say everything so bluntly. And that's how it, in the beginning it started for me. And it actually put me off a little bit because at the time I did know much more about, I had been using Rider-Waite, and those readings were also accurate, but like a little more chummy, a little easier to swallow in a sense. And so I did put it away for a little while, the Thoth deck. And then I brought it back out again after a while, and I really started to bond with it. I actually trimmed the deck, and that process of taking my time with each card and trimming it really somehow helped me bond with it and understand it in a very alchemical way. Now, I do want to say that I don't have any books on the Thoth deck except for the book that came with the deck, this little white book. So I'm no expert. I'm just telling you my feelings and what I see with this deck. But I want to say that since I bonded with it in that way, the readings are, while still accurate, they're not so kind of nasty as they were in the very beginning. Now let me just tell you when I had one of my early conversations with this deck, because I like to talk to my decks when at some point when I'm just working with them. And I like to ask my deck, tell me about your personality, what is your main personality? And when I asked this of this deck, the devil came up, and I absolutely love this card. It is one of my favorite cards in this deck, and it is probably one of my favorite devil cards. And I actually talked about this in a VR to Gypsy Chick in her Art of Tarot series. And so this was, the deck said, this is the main personality, and I also said, what will you most teach me? And this is the card that came up, Three of Wands, which in this deck is considered virtue. So I think that is very interesting. Those two would come up. One of the things I really like about this deck, and especially this devil card, is the amount of alchemical symbolism in the deck. You can see as you start to work with the cards and you start to look through some of them, you'll see some symbolism being repeated in the cards. Now I'm going to show you in the Magician card. It might be a little hard to see, but right here, if you get your own, you'll see a little golden egg there with wings. And you'll see that egg in several of the cards. And that is, a part of that alchemical process. So the majors especially are so much about that alchemical wedding and alchemical process, which I'm very drawn. Even as a young child, I knew that alchemy, I didn't even know what it was yet at 9 years old, but I knew it was going to be very important in my life. So I was really approaching a lot of my tarot studies in an alchemical and hermetic way. So that's why I have come to love this deck, in a sense. And there are, I think it was the Hermit also has the egg in another part of the process, the alchemical process here, where he is protecting its growth. So it's very interesting when you really study the symbols. Like I said, I don't have a book, and I don't really want one. Sometimes at this point, I don't always just want experts telling me what to think. When I can see with my own eyes, I could see this whole process being unfolded in the majors. Now, I want to address the idea of people saying that this is a different system than the Rider-Waite, and I don't feel that way. So what I feel is that maybe it's just a slightly different perception or slightly different take on the same system. Because, having that understanding that both Waite and Thoth were coming out of some of those deeper, higher level of Masonic orders, they're really studying the same thing. So the decks are so much based on that Masonic symbolism, and it is throughout the decks. And in fact, in some of the Masonic orders, my understanding is that it's almost an assignment. It can be an assignment to make your own deck so you can get to that next level. And no doubt that's why we have so many different decks. I'm sure they didn't all come out of that reason, but some certainly did. And so yeah, I think they are all based on the Masonic symbolism, Hermetic symbolism, and alchemical and astrotheological symbolism. So once you start to get, and they sound bigger, maybe, they're big words, but they're not hard to understand, these principles. So once you get to understand these basic interlocking symbolism, I think it's actually pretty easy to read. So even Kabbalah, is taught in those higher level of the Masonry, which I only know very little about the Kabbalah, but it does not affect my reading with this deck. It is a fantastic deck, and I think one of the reasons it does read so well is because it is based in those very old traditions. So the Masons got a lot of their information from the ancient Egyptians, and that's where that Hermetic and astrotheological symbolism comes in. But, also I see this same story in so many thousands of movies, and where you're seeing that alchemical process unfold. So we're continually being shown this story over and over again. Certainly if you've read the Potter books, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you've picked up on some of that symbolism that was very well crafted in that series of books, likely by a team of people. And as a matter of fact, that golden snitch looks a lot like the little egg here that I just showed you in the Magician card. So these are very old and significant symbols. And again, I think that's why it reads so well. And, a couple just other interesting little things, has nothing to do with the reading, but, about Crowley. First of all, the deck, of course, as everybody knows, came out posthumously. And he did seem to feel that he was a prophet, but that his work wouldn't be really recognized until about the 1960s. And I think he died in the 40s. So that's kind of interesting. He also, along with many of the things he did, he also, he was a British agent. He worked for MI6. And as a matter of fact, I think he might have even been there before it was even called MI6. But that, I think, is very interesting. So, it's nice to know when you're holding something in your hand, it's nice to know, I feel, a little more about the full story. And it helps people not only to understand, helps me, not only to understand, but to not have that need to revere or to unnecessarily idolize a person when you know, of course, they're answering to someone. And it, I don't know, I like to research, and I like to have that deeper understanding of what is always going on, and how the mind was working that was creating a deck or whatever it is, whatever topic that is. And so in the 60s, the ball was kind of picked up, in a sense. His work was kind of, brought back to life again, which was actually what he had sort of predicted. And a lot of it in the States, it was picked up in the States by Tim Leary, who also was an agent. He worked for the CIA. I think that's a very funny, interesting little fact, that they both had that connection. And but Leary did help put some of Crowley's work, in through the music industry, and and there it still has a life. So don't be afraid of this deck. It is steeped in very thoughtful, very important symbolism. I think it's a very interesting deck. I have several that I work with that maybe are a little more fun, but when I really need a no-holds-bar reading, I often will choose this deck. So thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye.